One cloud provider runs more of the internet than any government, any bank, any company on Earth. And right now, inside thousands of mid-market companies, the same uneasy conversation is happening in the same conference rooms. The AWS bill went up again. Not because anyone made a decision, it just grew, the way it always grows. And someone finally said the quiet part out loud. Are we customers of this cloud? Or are we hostages of it? So the question every mid-market CTO and head of infrastructure is wrestling with in 2026 is not, is AWS good? Of course it is good. It is the most capable cloud ever built. The question is darker and more expensive than that. Have you handed your company's entire technical future and your entire margin to a single vendor's price list? And if you have, can you ever get it back? Today, we answer that. No vendor sponsorship, no fence sitting, full stack, full verdict. Here's how this episode is structured. First, the framing, and this comparison is different from our usual head-to-head. This is not product A versus product B. It is a strategy versus a strategy. On one side, commit fully to AWS, go deep on its services, and accept being a single vendor shop. On the other, deliberately spread across more than one cloud or keep the ability to leave, even at a cost. Both are legitimate strategies chosen by serious companies. And if you only listen to the loudest voices, the all-in evangelists or the multi-cloud true believers, you will pick wrong. Because the honest answer depends entirely on facts specific to your company. Going all in on AWS in 2026 means more than just running your servers there. It means using the deep proprietary services, the managed databases, the serverless platform, the queues and event buses, the machine learning and AI services, the parts of AWS that have no exact equivalent anywhere else. The pitch is genuine and powerful. Maximum capability, the most mature platform on Earth, everything integrated, one set of skills, one bill, one vendor relationship. When you go deep on AWS, you are not renting servers. You are building your company on a platform, and that platform will do almost anything you ask of it. The history matters here. AWS effectively invented the modern public cloud and spent nearly 2 decades building the widest, deepest catalog of services in the industry. Hundreds of services, reliability at a scale almost no one else can match. Mid-market companies adopted it because it let small teams build things that used to require a data center and a staff to run it. In 2026, that lead is still real, but the relationship has matured into something companies feel more ambivalent about. The thing you have built is extraordinary. The thing you have also built, quietly, is a dependency. And dependency is the entire subject of this episode. The multi-cloud or cloud exit strategy in 2026 looks very different in spirit. It does not mean abandoning AWS. Almost no one does that. It means a deliberate choice to not be fully captured, running meaningful workloads on more than one cloud, or keeping your architecture portable enough that leaving is genuinely possible, or in some cases, moving specific workloads back to owned hardware where the economics demand it. The pitch is not capability. It is leverage, resilience, and freedom. The ability to negotiate from strength, survive one provider's bad day, and place each workload where it makes the most sense. The history here is more recent. For years, multi-cloud was mostly a slogan. Companies claimed it, few truly practiced it, and the complexity often was not worth the benefit. What changed is twofold. First, the bills got large enough that finance leaders started asking hard questions. Second, the tooling matured. Containers, infrastructure as code, and open standards made portable architecture genuinely more achievable than it was even 3 years ago. And a handful of well-publicized cases of companies moving large workloads off the cloud and saving enormous sums turned the conversation from heresy into board-level strategy. So one path is depth and commitment. The other is breadth and optionality. They are genuinely different bets. Keep that frame in your head. AWS all in as the single vast fortress, extraordinarily capable, but one way in and one way out. The multi-cloud path as the network of connected structures, each less mighty alone, but with routes between them. Almost every score we hand out today traces back to it. All in AWS will tend to win on capability, on simplicity, on engineering speed, and on the productivity of a single skill set. The multi-cloud path will tend to win on leverage, on negotiating power, on resilience, and on long-run cost control. Which of those matters more to your company is, honestly, most of the decision, and we will keep coming back to it. Let's talk money. Because the cloud bill is the line item that has surprised more mid-market budgets in the last 5 years than anything else in technology. And the costs of these two strategies behave in completely different ways. An AWS bill for a mid-market company is a layered thing. There is compute, billed by the hour or by usage. There is storage. There is the premium you pay for the managed services, the databases, the serverless platform, the analytics. And there is the discount structure. AWS will lower your rates significantly in exchange for committing to spend a certain amount over 1 or 3 years. That commitment is the heart of the money story. The discount is real and worth taking, but the moment you take it, you have agreed to keep spending, which means you have quietly agreed not to leave. Two specifics catch mid-market teams off guard, and they are worth naming precisely. The first is the managed service premium. The proprietary AWS services are genuinely excellent and genuinely save engineering time, but they carry a markup, and they are exactly the services that have no equivalent elsewhere, which means using them deepens your dependency at the same time as it raises your bill. The second, and the one almost nobody models properly, is data egress, the cost of moving your data out of AWS to anywhere else. Moving data within AWS is cheap or free. Moving it out is deliberately not. That asymmetry is not an accident. It is the single most important number in any conversation about leaving. In our experience modeling actual mid-market estates, call it a substantial production workload, real data volume, real traffic, an all-in AWS bill very commonly lands in the high 6 figures to several $million a year. And crucially, it tends to grow faster than the business does, because new services get adopted and old ones rarely get switched off. And the part that genuinely catches teams off guard is the exit estimate. When a company finally models the cost of leaving, re-engineering off the proprietary services plus the egress charge to move years of accumulated data, that one-time number is often large enough to end the conversation. Which is, of course, exactly what it is designed to do. The multi-cloud or exit path has a fundamentally different cost shape. In the near term, it almost always costs more, not less, and any honest analysis has to say so plainly. Running on more than one cloud means duplicated tooling, broader skills to maintain, more complex networking, and the deliberate choice to use more portable services that are sometimes less efficient than the proprietary ones you gave up. You are spending money now to buy optionality later. That is the trade, stated honestly. A higher run rate today in exchange for leverage and freedom tomorrow. There is one idea that does most of the work in the economics of this path, and you should understand it before you commit either way. The difference between operating cost and switching cost. All in AWS optimizes your operating cost. It is genuinely efficient to run, but it lets your switching cost grow without limit until leaving becomes unthinkable. The multi-cloud path deliberately accepts a higher operating cost in order to hold your switching cost down, to keep leaving possible. And here is the subtle part. Even if you never actually leave, a low switching cost is worth real money because it is the only thing that gives you genuine leverage in a renewal negotiation. Optionality has value even when it is never exercised. Here's the kicker for mid-market math, and it is genuinely a both things are true answer. In year one, all-in AWS is almost always the cheaper, simpler choice. The multi-cloud path costs more to stand up and run. But across a 5 to 7 year horizon, the picture can invert. A company that preserved its leverage negotiates far better renewals, avoids the worst of bill creep, and can move expensive workloads when the economics shift. The all-in company, by contrast, often finds its bill compounding with no real ability to push back. In other words, all-in AWS usually wins the first year on cost, and the multi-cloud path can win the decade. Now, before the comment section fills up, yes, all-in AWS can be cost-disciplined hard, with serious financial operations practice, reserved capacity, and ruthless cleanup. And a well-run AWS estate is far cheaper than a careless one. And yes, a poorly executed multi-cloud strategy can be the worst of all worlds. All the complexity, none of the leverage actually realized. But the structural truth holds. Across the mid-market estates we have reviewed, the all-in companies consistently have weaker negotiating positions and faster bill growth, while the companies that preserved optionality have measurably more control. That control is worth money. And here's the part that does not fit in a spreadsheet cell. When you are fully captured, your cloud bill stops being a cost you manage and becomes a cost that happens to you. Every year, the number goes up, and your only real options are to use less or to ask the vendor nicely. And a vendor that knows you cannot leave has very little reason to say yes. So this is not really a debate about cloud architecture. It is a debate about who holds the pen when the contract is renewed. A strategy that keeps you free to walk is not a luxury. It is the only thing that keeps the negotiation honest. Cost is one thing. Actually operating either strategy, keeping it running, secure, and sane for your engineers, is another. And in 2026, with platform teams stretched thin, operational reality is arguably the place where the multi-cloud dream most often meets a hard wall. Operating all in on AWS is, in pure operational terms, the easier life. And that has to be said honestly. One control plane, one identity and access system, one set of monitoring tools, one body of documentation, one community, one certification path for your engineers. Your team gets genuinely deep on a single platform, and that depth compounds. They know the failure modes, the quirks, the right way to do things. The operational tax of all-in AWS is low and well understood. The cost is everything we discussed in the last scene. You are paying for that operational ease with your independence. Operating across multiple clouds is genuinely harder, and any honest assessment has to lead with that. Each cloud has its own identity model, its own networking, its own monitoring, its own quirks, and your team has to be competent in all of them. The portable layer that makes multi-cloud work, containers, orchestration, infrastructure as code, abstraction tooling, is itself a system that has to be built and maintained, and it is not trivial. Across the cases we reviewed, standing up a genuine, well-run multi-cloud capability took 6 months to well over a year of deliberate platform investment, and it requires a stronger, more senior platform team than a single cloud shop needs. So why is multi-cloud so much harder to operate? 3 reasons. 1, skill multiplication. Deep expertise in one cloud is hard enough to hire. Competence across 2 or 3 is rarer and more expensive, and your team's depth on each is necessarily shallower. 2, the abstraction layer. To run portably, you adopt a layer that hides the differences between clouds, but that layer is itself software you now own, operate, and debug, and it can become its own source of complexity. 3, the integration tax. The proprietary services that make a single cloud so productive often have no portable equivalent. So a portable architecture sometimes means doing more engineering yourself. There is one more operational reality that almost never makes the evaluation honestly, and it should. Most companies that claim to be multi-cloud are not. They run almost everything on one cloud and have a small token presence on another. And they get the worst of both worlds. Real added complexity, but not enough real distribution to deliver leverage or resilience. Genuine multi-cloud is a serious, funded, deliberate program. Half-hearted multi-cloud is just single cloud with extra overhead and a comforting story. If you are going to do this, do it on purpose and resource it properly. The strategy only pays off if it is real, and a real one is expensive and demanding. Now, and this matters, the operational simplicity of all-in AWS is a genuine asset, not a trap in itself. If your team is small, your platform staff is thin, and your engineering energy is better spent on your product than on infrastructure, the single platform life has real defensible value. But if you have or will build a strong senior platform team that can genuinely carry the complexity, then multi-cloud's operational cost becomes an investment that buys you leverage and resilience you can actually use. This is the heart of the comparison. What can each strategy actually deliver, and what is each one genuinely risking? Let's break it into 4 dimensions. Depth of capability, resilience and uptime, concentration risk, the danger of having everything in one place, and access to leading AI. I'll score each one head to head. Dimension 1, depth of capability. All-in AWS wins this, and it is not close. AWS has the widest and deepest service catalog in the industry. If you commit fully, your engineers can reach for a mature, managed, well-integrated service for almost any problem, and they will move fast because of it. A multi-cloud strategy, by design, pushes you toward the services that exist in portable form across providers, which means you give up some of that depth on purpose. All-in AWS wins capability decisively. The open question is what that depth costs you in freedom. Dimension 2, resilience and uptime. This one genuinely splits, and the split is subtle. AWS is extraordinarily reliable, and within AWS, you can build highly resilient architectures across multiple availability zones and regions. For the overwhelming majority of failures, that is more than enough. But when AWS itself has a bad day, a rare, broad service disruption, a company entirely inside AWS has nowhere to go, and the whole business waits it out. A genuine multi-cloud architecture can, in principle, survive the loss of one entire provider. All in, AWS wins everyday resilience through maturity. True multi-cloud wins the rare catastrophic provider failure scenario, if and only if it is genuinely built for it. Dimension 3, concentration risk. This is the dimension the all-in evangelists least like to discuss, and the multi-cloud case rests heavily on it. When everything, compute, data, identity, billing sits with one vendor, you are exposed not just to outages, but to that vendor's decisions. A pricing change, a policy change, a strategic shift, an account dispute. Your entire company's technical existence depends on one commercial relationship staying healthy. A multi-cloud posture spreads that risk. No single vendor decision can hold your whole business hostage. This is the clearest structural win for the multi-cloud path. It is genuine risk diversification. The same logic as never keeping all your money in one place. Dimension 4, access to leading AI. This is where 2026 genuinely complicates the picture, and it cuts in an interesting direction. The most powerful AI models are not all available on the same cloud. Different frontier models are most readily accessible on different providers. A company locked entirely into one cloud may find that the best model for its needs lives somewhere else. A multi-cloud posture gives you the freedom to place an AI workload wherever the best model for that job happens to be. This is a newer argument, but a real one. In the AI era, being locked to one cloud can mean being locked away from the best AI. One honest caveat across all 4 dimensions, because the multi-cloud sales pitch is also seductive. Resilience and risk spreading are only real if the architecture genuinely delivers them. A company that claims multi-cloud but actually runs everything important on one provider has the concentration risk anyway. It has simply paid extra for the illusion of safety. Diversification that exists on a slide and not in the architecture protects nothing. The benefits in this scene are real, but every one of them is conditional on the strategy being genuinely, expensively, deliberately implemented, not merely declared. Net of all four dimensions. All in, AWS wins on raw capability and on the everyday reliability that maturity buys. The multi-cloud path wins on concentration risk, on surviving a catastrophic provider failure, and increasingly, on freedom to reach the best AI, but only when it is genuinely built. You are not choosing between safe and risky. You are choosing which risk you would rather hold. The risk of depending entirely on one excellent vendor, or the risk and cost of running a harder, more complex distributed strategy. And for most mid-market companies, the honest answer depends on how catastrophic a single vendor problem would actually be for your specific business. No cloud strategy exists in a vacuum, and every one of them is ultimately a negotiating position. So before you commit, you have to ask the questions the AWS account team will never raise for you. How captured are you? What is that costing you at the bargaining table? And what would it take to change that? AWS lock-in is real, and it is worth naming with precision because it has three distinct layers. The first is service lock-in, the proprietary services your code is written against, which would have to be re-engineered to leave. The second is data gravity, the sheer mass of data sitting in AWS, expensive and slow to move out. The third, and the most underestimated, is skills and habit lock-in. Your team thinks in AWS. Your tools assume AWS. Your whole way of working is shaped by it. None of these is a trap exactly, but together they form a position where by the time anyone asks, should we leave? The honest answer is, we no longer can. That is not an accident. That is the product working as designed. The multi-cloud or exit posture is fundamentally a leverage strategy, and this is its single strongest argument. By keeping your architecture portable, your data movable, and at least the credible option of running elsewhere, you change the entire character of every renewal conversation. A vendor negotiating with a customer who genuinely can leave behaves very differently from a vendor negotiating with a customer who cannot. The discounts are better, the terms are better, the responsiveness is better. And here is the crucial part. You may never actually move a single workload. The leverage works simply by being real. The credible threat of leaving is itself the asset. Two more dimensions matter here. The discipline that portability demands and the strategic value of optionality itself. The discipline. Staying portable is not free and it is not automatic. It is an ongoing engineering discipline. Every time an engineer reaches for a convenient proprietary service, a little portability is quietly traded away. And over time, those small trades add up to capture. Keeping a genuine exit option open means continuously choosing the portable path even when the proprietary one is easier. And that requires real organizational will sustained over years. The strategic value of optionality. This is the idea worth ending the scene on. In finance, the right to do something without the obligation to do it has measurable value. And the same is true here. The right to leave AWS, even unused, is worth real money in better renewals, in resilience, in the ability to seize an opportunity elsewhere. All in, AWS sells that option in exchange for efficiency and simplicity. The multi-cloud path pays a running premium to keep it. Whether that option is worth its premium is, in the end, the entire decision. So, the verdict. This verdict has to be more careful than usual because the honest answer genuinely depends on your company's size and stage. For the median mid-market company, call it a couple hundred to a couple thousand employees, a capable but not enormous platform team, and a need to spend its engineering energy on its product rather than its infrastructure, going all in on AWS but doing it consciously wins in 2026. The capability, the speed, and the operational simplicity are genuinely worth it at this stage. The losses, lock-in, weaker leverage, concentration risk, are real but manageable for most companies of this size. But, and this is the critical other half of the verdict, the multi-cloud or exit posture wins for a specific and important subset. Companies large enough that the cloud bill is a board level number. Companies where a single vendor outage or pricing change would be genuinely existential. Companies with the strong senior platform team that can carry the real complexity. And companies in regulated positions or with strategic reasons that demand provider independence. If that is you, the running premium of preserving optionality genuinely pays off in leverage, in resilience, in control. You just have to commit to it for real, fund it properly, and hold the discipline for years. If you are in the gray zone, somewhere between those two profiles, here is the decision framework I would actually use. Question 1. How large is your cloud bill relative to your company? Is it a routine operating expense or a number your board scrutinizes? If it is routine, lean all in AWS. If it is board level, lean toward preserving optionality. This is the single most predictive question on the list. The multi-cloud premium only makes sense when the stakes are large enough to justify it. Question 2. Do you have or will you genuinely build and fund a strong senior platform team capable of running real multi-cloud complexity? If yes, the multi-cloud path is viable. If not, all-in AWS is far safer. A multi-cloud strategy without the team to run it is the worst outcome of all. Be brutally honest about the team you actually have. Question 3. How catastrophic would a serious single vendor event be? A major outage, a punitive price change, an account dispute? If your business could absorb it, all-in AWS is defensible. If it would be existential, that risk alone justifies diversification. Price the worst case honestly, not optimistically. Question 4. Where should your engineering energy go right now? Into your product or into infrastructure independence? If your competitive battle is won or lost in your product, all-in AWS lets you focus there. If infrastructure cost and independence are themselves strategic to your business, the multi-cloud path earns its keep. There is no wrong answer. It is a question of where your advantage actually lies. If your answers split evenly, here is the honest tiebreaker, and it is a nuanced one. Default to all in AWS for now, because it is the faster, simpler, cheaper path today, but adopt it with discipline. Keep your data exportable. Prefer portable services where the cost is low, and document what an exit would actually take. In other words, go all in on the platform, but never go all in on the assumption that you can never leave. Preserve a cheap, lightweight option to change your mind. It costs little, and one day it may be worth everything. One last point before we close. The honest truth is that your cloud strategy is one of the most expensive, most strategic, and most slowly reversible decisions a mid-market company will ever make. And unlike most decisions, this one quietly gets harder to reverse with every passing month. AWS is a genuinely extraordinary platform built by a serious company. Going all in on it is not a mistake. Going all in on it without ever noticing that you have, that is the mistake that taxes a company for a decade. Our verdict for 2026 mid-market? All in AWS is the default, but a conscious eyes-open default, never an accidental one. The multi-cloud and exit posture is the deliberate strategic choice, made on purpose by companies large enough, exposed enough, and well-staffed enough to genuinely need it. Not adopted as a slogan, and not avoided out of simple inertia. We'll do deep dive episodes on each. An AWS cost discipline playbook, a realistic guide to building genuine multi-cloud portability, real case studies of companies that left and what it cost them. If you want those, subscribe, and the work keeps coming. Full stack, full verdict. No sponsorship from any cloud provider. If that's the kind of review you want more of, hit subscribe.